I want to start today with a question. How well do you actually know your partner? Not how well you think you know them. Not the version of them that shows up to family dinners and smiles at the right moments and says the right things when people are watching. I mean the version that exists in private. The version that speaks freely when there's no audience, no performance, no reason to filter. Because here is the thing about human beings, and I have learned this in 40+ years of being in rooms with all kinds of people. We perform, every single one of us. We perform for the people we love, sometimes even more than we perform for strangers. Because with strangers, the stakes are low. With the people we love, the stakes are everything. So we curate, we edit, we show them the version we want them to see, and we tuck the other version away somewhere private. The problem is, private doesn't always stay private. And on this particular day, on this stage, in front of this audience, one man's private version walked right out into the open. And his wife found out who he really was in the worst possible way. In front of 30 million people. Let me tell you what happened. The couple's names were Raymond and Gloria. 22 years married. They walked out holding hands. And I mean really holding hands, not the performative hand holding you sometimes see from couples who are trying to look happy for the cameras. Their fingers were interlocked, and Gloria had her head tilted slightly toward Raymond's shoulder. And Raymond was grinning like a man who had just won something before the game even started. They looked like a love story. The real kind. The kind people write about. Gloria was wearing a bright yellow dress. I remember that detail because of what came later. Because when you watch someone's world shift in real time, you remember what color they were wearing when it happened. Yellow, like sunshine. Like she had woken up that morning and decided to dress the way she felt. Raymond was in a navy blazer. Sharp, confident, he shook my hand like a man who had rehearsed the handshake. Everything about Raymond said, I am in control here. I know how this goes. Watch me. Now, before every show, we do something that most viewers don't know about. We bring the contestants in separately. Partners split up, sent to different rooms, and we ask them questions. Personal questions. The kind of thing designed to get real, unguarded answers. The kind of thing you say when you're sitting in a small room with a producer and a camera and you think you're just warming up, just getting comfortable. Just being casual before the real thing starts. We ask things like, what's one thing your partner does that makes you proud? What's a habit they have that drives you crazy? How would you describe your relationship in 3 words? Fun questions. Light questions. Questions meant to generate little moments of sweetness or gentle teasing that we can use to connect with the audience. I sat with Raymond, and I asked him the question. I said, Raymond, what is one thing about Gloria that drives you a little crazy? Keep it light, this is for fun. Raymond leaned back in his chair. He smiled. And then, without a moment of hesitation, without any visible awareness that what he was about to say was something he should perhaps keep inside, he said honestly, she thinks she's smarter than she is. She leads with emotion every single time. Every decision, every argument, every plan, it's all feeling, no logic. I love her, but I'm always cleaning up the messes that come from her not thinking things through. I looked at him. He looked back at me. He said, that's just the truth, Steve. She knows I think that. I said, does she? He said, she should. I want you to sit with that for a moment. She should. Not yes, we've talked about it. Not she knows I say it with love. She should. As in, I have decided this is true about her. I have decided it is fair for me to think it, and therefore she should have figured that out by now. That is a man who has been carrying a quiet contempt in his marriage for a very long time, and has convinced himself it isn't contempt, it's just honesty. We could have left it in the editing room. We had that option. But Raymond said it knowing there was a camera present. He said it without hesitation, without lowering his voice, without any signal that he understood this was something fragile. He said it the way you say something you've said so many times internally that it no longer feels sharp to you. So we made a decision. And I walked out onto that stage. The audience was warm. The lights were high. Gloria in her yellow dress was smiling the smile of a woman who had no idea what was coming. She kept looking over at Raymond with this easy affection, a nudge of the elbow, a quiet laugh at something he whispered. 22 years of shared language between them. 22 years of inside jokes and private signals and the particular shorthand that only long marriages develop. I did my introductions. I got the crowd going. And then I did something I have only done a handful of times in the history of this show. I stopped the usual rhythm. I stepped toward Gloria specifically. And I said, Gloria, before we play today, I had a chance to spend a few minutes with Raymond backstage, and I asked him a question. I want to share his answer with you. Gloria turned toward me, still smiling. Easy, relaxed, she said, oh yeah? What did he say? She was expecting something funny. You could see it. She was already preparing to laugh, already tilting her head the way you do when you're bracing for a playful moment. I said, I asked him what's one thing about you that drives him a little crazy. She nodded, still smiling. I said, he said, and I'm going to use his exact words because I think exact words matter here. He said you're not as smart as you think you are, that you lead with emotion and not logic, and that he's always cleaning up the messes that come from your decisions. The smile left Gloria's face, and the studio went so quiet I could hear the lights humming. Gloria didn't make a sound. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't say a word. She just stood there for a moment, and I watched her absorb it. I watched it move through her the way cold water moves through your chest when you drink it too fast. A physical thing. A settling. Then she turned and looked at Raymond. And Raymond, God help him, started talking immediately. Baby, it wasn't. Steve, tell her the context. It wasn't like that. I was just, that's not exactly what I. But Gloria wasn't watching his mouth move. She was looking at his eyes. And whatever she found there, whatever she saw in the fraction of a second before his explanation started, told her what she needed to know. Because here is something I have learned about people. Truly learned, not just observed, but understood in my bones. When someone tells the truth accidentally, you can always tell. There's no recovery. The body can't perform its way out of it fast enough. The truth has a shape, and when it comes out unguarded, the person who receives it can feel that shape even before their mind has processed the words. Gloria felt it. She looked at Raymond for a long moment. Then she looked at me. Then she looked out at the audience, and something passed across her face that I can only describe as clarity, the particular clarity that comes not from gaining something but from losing something you didn't know you were carrying. The weight of not knowing. The weight of wondering. Gone, she reached down to the podium and picked up her purse. She straightened her yellow dress. She took one breath. And then, Without a word, without a scene, without tears, without even raising her voice, Gloria walked off the stage. Not running, not storming, walking the way a woman walks when she has made a decision and the decision is final. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't react the way audiences usually react to dramatic moments on this show. They were silent, because what they had just witnessed wasn't drama. It was something real, something private made public, and the privacy of it demanded a certain kind of respect even in a room full of strangers. Raymond stood at the podium calling her name. "Gloria, Gloria, come on. Baby, just Gloria." She didn't look back. I stood at that microphone for a long moment. And then I did something very deliberate. I turned to Raymond, and I said very quietly, "Raymond, I'm going to give you a minute." And for the first time since we'd met, Raymond had absolutely nothing to say. Here is what I need to tell you about what Gloria did. Because some people, when they heard about this episode, said she overreacted, said it was a game show and she should have stayed and played, said maybe Raymond had a point, maybe it was just his way of expressing frustration, maybe she was being too sensitive. I want to address that directly. Gloria did not overreact. Gloria reacted exactly as much as the situation required. Because what Raymond revealed in that backstage room was not a frustration. It was not a bad day or an uncharitable moment or an off-the-cuff comment he didn't mean. It was a belief. A settled, practiced, deeply held belief about his wife's fundamental capacity. He said it calmly. He said it confidently. He said she should already know he thinks that. That is not frustration. That is contempt. And contempt, researchers who study marriage will tell you this. The ones who have spent decades studying what makes relationships survive and what makes them collapse, contempt is the single most reliable predictor of a marriage ending. Not conflict, not anger. Contempt, the quiet, settled belief that your partner is beneath you, less than you, operating at a lower level than you. Raymond had been walking around for how long? Years, maybe. Decades, maybe. Believing that Gloria was not as smart as she thought she was. Cleaning up after her. Tolerating her emotion-led decisions. Managing her in his mind like a problem to be handled rather than a person to be loved. And Gloria had been in that marriage. Living inside that dynamic. Feeling it without being able to name it, wondering sometimes why the support felt a little thin, why the encouragement felt a little hollow, why the partnership felt occasionally like something she was carrying more of than she should be. And then she found out why. On a stage, in front of 30 million people. And she walked off. I think that walk was one of the most dignified things I have ever seen happen in my presence, because she didn't perform her pain for the audience. She didn't have a breakdown that people could screenshot and share. She didn't give Raymond the satisfaction of a fight, because a fight would have required her to stay and engage, and engaging would have suggested that what he said was debatable, and it wasn't debatable to her. She had heard the truth. She had processed it in real time, and she had made a choice. That is not a woman who is weak. That is a woman who is done. Raymond, I want to talk to you for a moment. Because I think somewhere underneath all of that confident dismissal, underneath the blazer and the rehearsed handshake and the performance of a man who has everything under control, I think there is something scared, something that learned at some point that the safest way to move through life was to be the smartest person in the room. And when you married someone who challenged that, someone whose intelligence was different from yours, whose way of knowing things didn't match your framework, instead of being curious about it, instead of being grateful for it, you decided to be superior to it. And that decision cost you 22 years of actually knowing your wife. Because here is what I know about Gloria, from the 15 minutes I spent in her presence. She is sharp. She is emotionally intelligent, and I want to say that clearly. Because emotional intelligence is not the absence of logic. It is a form of logic. The kind that reads rooms and people and relationships with an accuracy that pure analytical thinking cannot reach. The kind that tells you when something is wrong before the data confirms it. The kind that walked off a stage because it didn't need more information. Gloria knew. She has probably always known. She just until today didn't have the words in Raymond's voice to confirm it. I hope she took that yellow dress and went somewhere worth being. I hope she found people around her who could see, clearly and immediately, how extraordinary she is. I hope she stopped making herself smaller to fit inside Raymond's definition of smart. And I hope Raymond, sitting in the parking lot of that studio, or on the drive home, or in the silence of a house that felt different that night, I hope Raymond did the hardest thing a person can do. I hope he told himself the truth. Not the version he tells other people, not the version that makes him the reasonable one, the logical one, the one who's always cleaning up after everyone else. The real version. The one that admits, I have been looking at my wife through a lens of superiority for so long that I forgot to see her at all. That's where healing starts. Not in the apology is just the beginning. It starts in the honest, uncomfortable, ego-dissolving moment when you stop defending what you said and start understanding why you said it. Gloria walked off that stage with more grace than most people could manage with a month of preparation. Raymond, you have a lot of work to do, and Gloria, wherever you are, I hope every single room you walk into knows immediately how lucky it is to have you.